This is the second generation specialized Kenevo with full 29-inch wheels. First thing you need to know is it raises the bottom bracket up and makes an amazing trail experience. It ends up riding like the old full 29-inch Levo on cross-country trails. It's extremely fast, efficient, absolute weapon of a climber when you're doing trail rides.
The bottom bracket height.
The most interesting thing I found is the big wheel on the Kenevo slows the rear suspension down, and it frankly feels better in the rear end. It's more predictable back there. It ends up riding very similar to the Specialized Enduro. Even though that linkage looks way different, these bikes ride identical once you put the big wheels on the Kenevo. So on flatter sections of trail or rock gardens, the 29-inch Kenevo is an absolute bruiser and will go through anything without a shadow of a doubt. The 29-inch Kenevo, it's not my favorite. I felt super out of control on these steeper downhill lines. It does not jump as good, and it loses any playfulness it did have with the 27.5 wheels. Another thing to note is 29-inch wheels are not as strong as 27, and the tires are way cheaper too. So you're gonna save money by running the 27.5 wheel. Although the Kenevo is an absolute cockroach, it can adapt to any terrain. Let's watch it in its natural habitat. This is where downhill bike 27.5 wheels belong. The stock Kenevo is 180 millimeter travel front and rear, full 27.5 bike. It does really good at the bike park. No shocker there.
Oh, man.
The common misconception is downhill bikes mute the trail. They don't mute the trail, they're just harder to get up to speed. And if you're riding a Kenevo, you got a motor so you can get up to speed. So bad stuff from the bike park. I did like 40 miles. The entire bike was rattling apart between runs. Just to be clear, I'm an average mountain biker, and these 27.5 wheels really help me in the jumping department. The Kenevo is a really amazing bike at high speed. It just feels very composed. Most 1300 millimeter wheelbase bicycles do feel amazing at high speed, but let me tell you where the Kenevo is different. When you get it into these tight berms, it feels like I'm pulling about 5 Gs in a fighter jet. The worst thing about the stock Kenevo, it's absolute rubbish on the trail. You'll be pedal striking, hitting the crank arms. If you need cheap crank arms, check out praxis.com. They're like 90 bucks, cheapest ones on the market. The Hope cranks are $155, but they're a little bit too expensive for my taste. The Mullet setup, Fox 36 180 up front. It's the perfect blend of trail and shred. Why are you running a 36? Everybody's on 38s. This bike taught me that 38 millimeter stanchions are totally overrated. The Boxer and the 36 are way more plush on the hands. Gives you just enough bottom bracket clearance to make it trail worthy, but not too tall like the 29er. This is probably the best setup for most people. I'll highlight 2 rides on this bike to explain that. So the first ride here, I'm in the Alps of the United States. It's this mountain range in eastern Oregon. It's 8,000 feet, looks identical to the Alps. I almost fell off the cliff right there, pretty sketchy. And the Mullet is the way to go because it's tall enough to not pedal strike, and it's not too tall like the 29er. This trail has extreme exposure. I had the seat down the whole day, full turbo mode, exposure on both sides or one side. Super sketchy. Mullet was the absolute best. Next trail I want to highlight on the Mullet setup. This is my favorite trail. It's an elevation dumping downhill line. It's a little out of my pay grade. I struggle on this trail with trail bikes. But let me tell you, the 27.5, look at that. It's got all the clearance for my butt. but it has the efficiency to climb up the hill. You know, a lot of these downhill lines require a ton of climbing and you need a little bit more efficiency. The Mullet's compromise setup works pretty good for jumping. Better than the 29, but not as good as the full 27. Yeah, huge mistake. I wasted a ton of currency and time building this 26-inch wheel up. I made a whole video about it. First trail down, the rear wheel hung up, went over the handlebars, slammed. I learned a super good lesson from this though. So I overstroked the front boxer to 200 millimeters, thinking I needed the bottom bracket clearance for the 26. But midday, I popped the 27.5 in and I go, this bike is amazing with a 200 millimeter boxer. I can't believe I never ran it like this all this time. It's got great bottom bracket clearance for trail riding, retains all its playfulness, and jumps great. And the most important thing, this air spring to make the fork 200 millimeters of travel costs less than a Maxxis tire. There's only two models at Kenevos to choose from. There's the Expert and there's the Comp. The 2020 and the 2021 are almost identical. My bike's a 2021. These bikes initially came with a coil shock and then they started breaking. So then Specialized retrofitted them with Super Deluxe, which is kind of a garbage shock. Personally, I would not run any coil on this bike because there's so much leverage in that rear suspension. The later model Kenevos, this ugly color here, comes with a 1-up dropper post, a 12-speed, the Mastermind TCU. It's much better value for the money on the new ones. The geometry on the later model, it gets a little bit of a tweak. The reach gets longer, the stack gets shorter. The head tube's half a degree steeper. That's super interesting. The bottom bracket gets raised up 6 millimeters. I guess they realized how bad they pedal striked initially. Let's talk about the Specialized Kenevo Comp. They're literally always out of stock. That's why I had to buy the Expert one, because I couldn't even find a Comp. The Comp comes with a weak sauce 500 battery, but beggars can't be choosers. If I was to do this over again, I would probably buy a Comp, a 700 battery, and then mullet the front and just be done. Long travel is amazing. Let me explain to you why it's amazing. You got this huge amount of stroke here. So number one, you don't have to run as many volume spacers. Number two, you can choose the amount of sag you want to run. I personally like a poppy, playful bike, so I run like 36% sag on the rear and 30 on the front. This way I can push through all the suspension and get a pop out of it. I've ridden the bike with a much less sag and it's way more planted and composed, but personally I'm kind of a surfer, so I like to. The greatest thing about the Kenevo is it raises your ability, lets you ride trails out of your pay grade, substantially more confident than your trail bike. You can put any wheel on any side of this bike. That should be the slogan for the bike. The geometry of this bike is so amazing. It has super low standover. You got short legs, this bike's got you covered. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave me a rating and review. And click here for the Mullet vs. Kenevo review.